Why are we here today? First, we would like to address two issues that pose the greatest threat to Kenya as a state and Kenyans as one people: insecurity and corruption. No state can stand if these issues that pose an existential threat to Kenya remain unaddressed. We are here because our hearts are heavy. We come first to mourn with our brothers and sisters who have lost loved ones, most recently in Kapedo and Mandera. These fellow Kenyans, both civilians and those in the security services, died because of their commitment to the service of this nation and to us, their fellow citizens. We are here also to stand with those who are saying no to all forms of gender-based violence, joining with those who condemn most vociferously the barbaric attacks by a few Kenyan men on our fellow female citizens under the guise of protecting society's mores by stripping women in our streets. This is not in our tradition as Africans and is inimical to the standards we have covenanted to uphold in our new constitution. We come as Kenyan citizens to stand against all forms of insecurity and terrorism visited on innocent individuals, whether in the name of a war against the state or as a callous act of cruelty on vulnerable fellow Kenyans. However, there is only so much we can do as individuals, and we're not about to go out and all buy rungus to protect ourselves, or guns. And that is why the last 2 weeks have seen Kenyans spontaneously take to the streets in expressions of outrage against the stripping of women in public and to protest the security meltdown that is underway across the land. Despite energetic efforts by some in the Jubilee government since it assumed office to paint public demonstrations, which are a constitutional right, as the work of foreign-funded so-called evil society, it is the reality we have experienced recently as Kenyans that is sending ordinary Kenyans to the street and that reveals this state propaganda as nonsense. A dramatic decline in security and in the safety of the lives and property of Kenyans would appear to have accompanied Jubilee's tenure in office thus far. From Westgate to Usalama Watch, Operation Sanitize Eastleigh, to Mpeketoni, to Lamu, that remains under an illegal curfew, to Kapedo, where 26 innocent policemen sadly lost their lives, to the recent invasion of mosques, further alienating large sections of the Kenyan population along religious lines, and most recently to Mandera, we are forced to acknowledge that we are living in the middle of a slow-motion security meltdown. Events over the last year and a half in Tana River, Garissa, Nairobi, Isiolo, Baringo, Samburu, Turkana, Mandera, Lamu, Mombasa, and Bungoma bear grim testament to the fact that this government has failed to prosecute one of its core mandates, which is to protect the lives and property of the Kenyan people. One of the rights that the government has the constitutional duty to protect is not to be subjected to any form of violence from either public or private sources, Article 29. The government is failing dismally in this respect. As the crime rate soars and entire sections of the country become no-go areas, even for government officials, incompetence and sometimes outright flippancy of responses by top officials, including the president and deputy president, to this deteriorating situation, feeds a climate of increasing fear and despondency. Kenyans were particularly upset last week when it became clear that the head of state remained on an overseas business and pleasure trip while Kenyans were being massacred in Mandera. To some, it was indicative of the importance or the lack of importance he places on his function and role under Article 131 of the Constitution. The President is a symbol of national unity. Top officials have been manifestly unable to inspire confidence that they know what they are doing by demonstrating either empathy for the lives of Wananchi or a proper command of the response to the situation, let alone a plan for dealing with the underlying problems. It is therefore clear that Kenyans are no longer at ease, and fear for the future troubles many. In matters of security, the buck stops emphatically with the President, for he is leader of the government that is required by the Constitution to serve all Kenyans. The administration can spend billions on expensive computer security systems, but at the end of the day, we are all our brothers and our sisters' keeper. And above all, this must be the President's philosophy. If the President is unwilling or unable to lead, the decline is precipitous. Particularly worrying is the singling out of the Muslim community for attacks, jeopardizing national integration. Worse is yet to come. As Kenyans of goodwill, we recognize that security should not be politicized, and we offer to play our part in assisting in all genuine efforts to return Kenya to a state where the majority of citizens have confidence that the government is in control of the security situation. We would do well to remember that the Anglo leasing contracts, some of which were paid out under Jubilee's tenure, were for the provision of equipment and services 10 years ago that would have greatly have mitigated the security crisis we're in. They were, in Kenyan parlance, eaten. And I'll now hand over to John.
Corruption. Chicken Gate. Kenyans have in recent weeks been grimly entertained by reports emanating from the prosecution in a British court of the security printing firm Smith & Osman. Details emerging from the court allege corruption involving some of the most senior past and present officials of the Independent Elections and Boundaries Commission and the Kenya National Examinations Council. The implications of this kind of corruption being described as Chicken Gate because the British company's representatives and their counterparts euphemistically described bribes as chicken is potentially devastating. For starters, the Kenya National Examinations Council is the spinal column of Kenya's education system. If it is true that it has been systematically infected with corruption, the implications are dire because Kenyans will inevitably lose faith in their system of national exams. Recent revelations accompany persistent and consistent reports of exam papers leaking, being sold, and generally being part of an exam system whose integrity has been lost. It is a bitter irony that this year, 2004, marks the year when the beneficiaries of the free primary education system was introduced in 2004. This is the year they have just completed their Form 4 examinations. Corruption of the Examinations Council betrays them, their families, the country as a whole, by toppling a pillar of our education system. It is alleged in a British court, with reference to considerable documentation, that officials of Smith & Osman dished out chicken or bribes to current and former officials of the IEBC as well. This is not the first time the integrity of the IEBC and its leadership has been brought into question. An elections body, like a bank, survives on public trust and derives its legitimacy and credibility not from the technical sophistication of its election materials, tools, and procedures, but from the public faith in its impartiality, competence, and integrity. The IEBC lost public trust a long time ago, and the latest scandal is merely the final nail in the coffin of an already dead institution. It is shameful and a testament to greed and powerful anti-Kenyan sentiments that the named officials refuse to resign and remain steadfast in their positions while appreciating that their conduct can lead to the kind of electoral failure that in turn precipitates violence on a wide scale in a country like Kenya. We no longer have an institution capable of holding a national election. Kenya is at a critical tipping point. We can either respect our new constitution and the spirit of constitutionalism it implies, or allow a contradictory rollback of hard-won freedoms that will not be bloodless. The spontaneous demonstrations by Kenyans in the last 2 weeks demonstrated the growing outrage of the Kenyan people. It demonstrated their exhaustion with the government's endless propaganda. They are demanding one thing: leadership. True leadership beyond flowery words full of empty promises. Leadership that begins to tackle the security situation that is sliding out of control. Leadership that takes on corruption in critical institutions and doesn't have to wait for British courts to prosecute cases involving Kenyan officials who are, in a totally bizarre turn of events, still sitting comfortably in office, reading about themselves in the newspapers like the rest of us, in an unprecedented display of impunity. There is one man who can begin to change this, and that's the President of Kenya, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Kenyans would be happy to support any efforts to clean up these critical institutions at this critical time. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with one man, the President. It's time he picked up the baton and led. It's time he goes beyond the hand and the head to the heart and the soul, beyond the hardware to the software of our fraying nation. Mr. President, please observe and respect the Constitution as you have sworn to do and as the Constitution requires you to do. God bless Kenya. Thank you very much.